Hello and welcome, everybody. I am, of course, Sarah Snell Cooke, your host here at the Crane Connection. I am joined today by Yinglian Xie. Welcome.
Hi, Sarah. Yeah, it's my great pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to meet you. And so you're the co-founder and president for technology of a company called DataVisor. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and the company?
Definitely. So, DataVisor is an end-to-end AI-powered fraud risk platform that is helping financial institutions, including like banks, credit unions, payment providers, to help us protect against a variety of different type of fraud, financial crimes. So we
Mm.
do support broadly like onboarding fraud and ACH and all kind of different transaction fraud as well as card payment fraud as well. And so regarding myself, and so I'm technology background and AI technology has always been my passion. I've had a tech background as early as kind of being the researcher at the time. And after obtaining PhD and served as kind of the research role in Microsoft fighting of large scale fraud and abuse issues. And afterwards started and really our mission, all of us with the cutting edge technology.
Yeah, no, and it sounds really cool I'm not a tech person, but it does sound really cool from what I understand. You guys recently signed on True Cooperative Bank, which is actually a credit union from Canada, correct? And so you're going to provide real-time fraud detection across onboarding, login, profile changes, all the stuff you mentioned a bit ago. Can you define what real time is in practice and how that happens?
Yeah, so when the consumers is us thinking about the real time, right? And we many times are taking for granted a lot of things should happen real time. And this is in fact the growing demand of a payment being real time, in particular the latest experience of what we are seeing of certain kind of more modern payment apps and including Venmo, PayPal, right? Zelle, etc all started bringing that real-time experience. So from our eyes, from our lens, real-time means instantaneous. And if we come to banks and credit unions, there are still different type of kind of payments that fall into different landscapes, and not everything is still real time. But I think everybody's moving forward faster to meet the customer real time needs. If you look at the transaction perspective, car payment, which we use a lot every day, absolutely is real time. And from an ACH perspective, and traditionally it's unfortunate it's being batch and but now they're moving toward the same day ACH, and some banks started offering kind of instant ACH kind of experience. And in Canada's kind of world, we have kind of this e-transfer, e-payment, that concept, which is similar from a US perspective, that experience of like Zelle payment, RTP, those are all newer type of form of payment that the banks started working together to provide that better experience to the customers. So I would say, and as the payment industry advance, and we are truly moving toward that kind of real time kind of payment transfer. But on the other hand, if you look at tech stack, in particular from the lens of fraud protection and the historical and legacy solutions are still not catching up just because these are the newer forms of, I would say, payment still coming to be adopted.
And the bad guys are using AI on their end as well. So we gotta the good guys gotta keep up with them. And some of the common attacks, of course, are like unauthorized transactions. Now we're getting more into impersonation scams, whether it's voice or even visual, stolen cars, all that kind of stuff. And so the credit unions, they don't care what size institution you are. In fact, they're probably going to see smaller institutions as softer targets, I would think, putting on my fraudster hat. But so as credit unions are member first. They want to and entrusted with keeping the security of their financial information. Each loss can be it feel you almost feel it harder because you know the members. You've only served this tight group of people, at least here in the US. I know it's a little different in Canada, but how can smaller institutions level that playing field in so that they have, say, Chase level security, but maybe not the Chase level price tag?
Yes, definitely. For credit unions, a big kind of differentiator is exactly what you commented about, that the personal kind of a connection feel, that the connection with the members and particular the member experience is ultimately very important. And coming to this, we're now swamped with all kind of scam attacks and phishing attacks. It is increasingly becoming challenging for these credit unions who I think have fewer kind of technology kind of spending kind of dollar amount in comparison to big banks to really be harnessed and then to fight this modern type of attacks. And from a attacker perspective, like you mentioned, credit unions are one of their favorite targets because I think for the exact reason you talk about. And attackers' hope is that perhaps credit unions are not as sophisticated as they were hoping like bigger banks are. And for credit unions, they're more member friendly and so likely want to reduce kind of the friction for their customers, make it easier for transactions to go through, make it easier for them to get that better kind of a member experience. At the same time, they have fewer IT staff, right? And they have fewer kind of reviewers and operation kind of these staff members. And also another important thing is that for credit unions, sometimes they don't have as big amount of data to quickly come to see the wide footprint of the different type of
Mm.
attacks and be able to learn from that. And so that said, and for DataVisor, our mission is to provide these credit unions and mid-sized kind of financial institutions with number one, the both kind of best technology and the best kind of tech stack to still be able to fight fraud very effectively. And the second, be able to provide that knowledge and the industry kind of benchmark knowledge and maybe consortium signals to help these credit unions so that even though they didn't get to see all the type of attacks, but the providers like us, we do, right? And so
Mhm.
we can harness them. So this is a benefit. And from this perspective, credit unions don't fight this alone, but be able to work with vendors like us and to benefit from that the widespread industry knowledge. And for such as DataVisor, we work with very broad set of customers and we work with credit unions, work with banks and work with payment providers. So we constantly see what's coming up there and what's going to happen. So hopefully that knowledge, when we combine that into where our kind of technology stack and turn that into the domain knowledge that credit union can benefit. And another area which we specifically focusing on from a vendor perspective, focusing on helping credit union is to make the solution a little bit easier to consume. And because we've seen what are the common type of relationship and experience them with the customer, and we can essentially develop more kind of out of box kind of solutions that provide the credit unions with the type of experience they typically are anticipating. Obviously, everybody still have their own unique perspective, but at least giving them a set of a toolkit and the modern technology that is already configured good enough for them to take and then build on top of it is what we see can quickly help credit unions fight off these even more kind of sophisticated fraud attacks in today's world. And not to mention, AI is another big thing, right? Agent is where we can significantly bridge the gap. And in today's world of coming to say, hey, I don't have sophisticated kind of like the number of huge team of tech staff to deal with this. And we have AI agent and we have AI come to play to mitigate that gap.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the same time, the consumers don't even realize that it's all going on in the background. They just see their transaction go through, which is great because some of the systems now, I feel like at one institution, everything is marked as fraud. And so it irritates me because I get that notification all the time. And is this you? And I text back, yeah, it was me. But yeah, to better identify those, it's so much easier on the consumer side for sure to better identify them, but also do it right then, as opposed to bugging the consumer or holding up payment. So yeah, and one of the things that you all also have I thought was really interesting, and I think you're just touching on it there, was you have built a suite of conversational AI agents for crime prevention, financial crime prevention. How does that work?
Yes, in today's world, and you see kind of fraudsters act really fast. And whenever they found a vulnerability, can go instantly, and they share that kind of information. And we talk about the latest kind of a particular AI model coming up, and then Mythos, right? That makes everybody scary because that if they fall into the hands of attackers, that can be devastating of how fast things can go and in terms of digging vulnerabilities and breaking systems. And similarly, I think from a fraudster perspective, they today absolutely are leveraging the technology. And if we don't do that, and you can see it's an
Mhm.
imbalance of the game and for protecting all of us. So I think as a consumer, we probably would be worried, are our banks and service providers be harnessed with the latest technology, right?
Mhm.
So that's where we're bringing this conversational AI. So
Mhm.
number one purpose is obviously, I would say, fight AI with,
Mhm.
and only
Mhm.
when we actually be able to act as fast as enough and almost in real time as attack happens and discover it and defend it and protect us, that we are on the same level ground. And in many times we want to even be able to do things proactively, meaning predict what could happen and before the any attack and launch into something more real. So from that perspective, we not only have this conversational AI, but DataVisor also has a technology called unsupervised machine learning specifically for detecting new novel attacks and even predicting these sleeper cells. So this is one side of leveraging this conversational AI agent is they can be more intelligent. When they look at the data, they look at what's going on, they can quickly come up to this more predictive kind of idea of what's going on. The second part of a conversational AI agent is addressing the usability issue of a platform when things happen so fast. You almost are looking at somebody with the tech mindset to go ahead and investigate and pull the right amount of data, looking at the attacks, and then be able to operate in the sophisticated cutting edge, we say the platform effectively enough. But and for these tasks, and sometimes you need a little bit more kind of data analytics knowledge, you need the programming knowledge, and you even though our UI interface is local, no code, and you still have to go in to operate and have the
Mhm.
intimate knowledge. Now with the conversational AI agent, we all know things can be as easy as typing your asks and questions.
Mhm.
And you can even talk to them. Now
Mhm.
it becomes, oh, I can talk to these fraud kind of detection platform to having kind of this conversation to ask it to go investigate and ask it to go identify attack patterns and to mitigate it and test it immediately. So that level of user friendliness and the easiness and combined with the intelligence, I really think can dramatically change the landscape of how we fight
Mhm.
fraud in the past. Is we have this much stronger kind of a companion and maybe a tool kind of that works and intelligently and easy to work with because you're having a partner now. This
Yeah.
is how we were thinking about when we launched this conversational AI agent is to be more game changing.
Yeah, yeah, easier for the layperson to understand how to use. And you're finding fraud at the first step, at step one, when the consumer is either starting a new account online or logging into their account rather than cleaning up the mess afterward. And I can think of several ways this could be beneficial beyond the fraud detection. Obviously, fraud detection is critical, but how many are there? What other ways are there that this is better for not only the credit unions, but also the members?
Yeah, definitely. I would say for kind of this general, when we talk about the AI agent and with the latest technology fraud kind of detection, I think this widely can be applicable to a broader spectrum of financial institutions. And in fact, we've been seeing our technology being adopted across many different kind of even industries in terms of e-commerce and the shipping industries. And as you can see, with the AI kind of technology coming up, fraud is everywhere. And
Of
this is
course.
probably not surprising. We just are having all kinds of different scams, right? And targeting us around all areas. And so I do think the whole industry needs to have this sense of protection kind of parameter. And the parameter goes beyond not cybersecurity, goes across all kinds of chains where there is potential kind of interest in the money movement and etc.
Mhm.
That ultimately it's the consumers of us that needs to be protected. And
Mhm.
wherever there's a consumer, where there are kind of financial gains, it can be leveraged by the
Mhm.
bad actors. And that's where we find kind of this kind of AI technology, this cutting edge. We talk about agents, we talk about real-time decisioning and the capability and the protection capability. I think it needs to go across broad spectrum everywhere. And just this is our experience is we don't want to worry about am I going to be scammed and every time. We
Yeah.
want to feel the safe and the trust. So
Mhm.
ultimately, it's the customer experience and we hope to protect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I imagine too, whoever used to monitor the screens or whatever it was that was protecting the consumers from scams, there's a savings there in not only time, but also maybe using that employee for something more human facing rather than just watching the screens to make sure they don't see fraud patterns or whatever it is that the
Exactly.
previous system. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
we want it to work seamlessly, essentially protect the life cycle. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm going to ask what I think is probably an obvious question, but I don't want to assume anything. Why is this so critical now to have that real-time fraud detection?
We talk about in the beginning, you ask questions about the real time. As you can see, that as technology pace, as consumers kind of expectation change, we are now having this kind of assumptions and requirements, and by default, that things are going to move toward the real time. And
Mm,
as you can see, this is a market trend and a need. And at the same time, we also talk about another aspect of real time is fraudsters working real time. And say when they launch attacks, it's pretty large scale everywhere and massive, and then they go on to the next wave. And that those two aspects and the legitimate kind of normal customers' expectations and what's happening even on the fraudster side, and both actually pressure a lot of real-time needs. And
mm,
so when the money is gone and you cannot take it back, in particular through these real-time kind of channels, and then with Zelle, instantly
right.
can be gone. Not to mention now you started having RTP, which the threshold of wire transfer is significantly raised. Now millions
Hmm.
of dollars can be scammed, or millions of dollars can go to the fraudsters if we don't have this real-time protection. That notion can be quite scary. We
Hmm.
indeed need to step up protection in real time as well.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of credit unions that won't be senders. They'll receive, but they won't send on those type of transactions. But yeah, no, I always allow my guests to have the final thoughts. What would you like to leave our credit union audience with today?
Oh, I said that the landscape is changing fast, and that's one thing. I've worked in the fraud industry and all my career, kind of for, as you can see, nearly kind of 15, 20 years. And so I've seen the one thing about this is we are facing with active adversaries and constantly evolving, constantly change. And therefore, for any of us fighting against this, we need to have the same mindset. We cannot be static. We need to be constantly looking at how we're going to evolve. If we don't evolve, we already instantly behind. When we move as fast as we could and adopting even more kind of advanced technology, can we sit on the other side to say, hey, we have an upper hand here?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it, Yingli. And yeah, thank you for your time and expertise. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.